All right, we got colbyplus.com with us today, Scott.
Yeah, buddy. Colby Plus. I've been thinking about our trip to Peru, and I'm going to have a nice, warm, toasty, buttery Colby Plus full suit for those wonderful South swells that are going to greet us in August.
Dude, I cannot wait. I get fed footage periodically, and I am frothing. We're going to be surfed out.
I am too. The good news is I already know the wetsuit that I'm going to bring. That's so great to be able to take my Colby Plus and put it aside and my wet dry duffel from Colby Plus and my leashes from Colby Plus. Or now I have to deal with surfboards. But the beauty of Colby Plus is that that part of the trip is taken care of, and I can count on it. It's going to keep me buttery toasty warm.
Well, the good news is too, they altered their design on the wetsuits. It used to be the black body with the gray sleeves, the dark gray sleeves. There was a little bit of a color differentiation. Colby has switched over to all black, but those gray ones are now on sale. So you can get the full suit with the Yamamoto rubber for a 3-2 for 250 bucks. You can get the 1.5 millimeter jacket for under 100 bucks, which is kind of incredible. The short sleeves under 200, the 4.3 is only 260. So if you want to benefit from those discounts while they last, because the inventory will sell out, you can go to colbyplus.com and there's a banner along the top. So grab those at discounted prices. And then the other big sale that's happening right now is at Real Water Sports. They're doing the Memorial Day sale. So jump in on that while you can too.
Yeah, look, another Memorial Day sale. Another Memorial Day has come, and I love Memorial Day for a number of reasons. It just feels like the beginning of summer, right? There's in the past, there was the Santa Cruz Longboard Union contest that I would go to every year. For whatever reason, Memorial Day has a warm spot in my heart. There's baseball season, there's NHL hockey, there's NBA playoffs, but there's also the Memorial Day sale at Real Water Sports, folks.
$200 off all JS surfboards. Other boards are discounted as well. And then, up to 40% off fins, 30% off leashes, all sorts of discounts. So go to realwatersports.com and then stock up for the summertime.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, Guy, David. Yeah, Guy, welcome. It's the Spit Podcast. It's David Lee Scales and Scott Bass, and we're talking all things surf in the surf world. Culturally, historically, what's going on out there, what's happening. And good morning to you, David. It's May. Good Lord, it's May 22nd.
Good morning, Scott Bass. Big week in WSL surfing.
Yeah, a lot going on in the WSL, right? We have the Margaret River Pro. Of course, the mid-season cut is occurring. We can talk about that. I have a Who Said That for you, David, and Kelly Slater news and a drinking game.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I'll drink my drinkag1.com/surf for this drinking game because it's a little too early to participate in adult beverages.
Right.
Real quickly, too, I want to remind people about Patreon. Go over to Patreon, Spit Pod, and join us there. We have bonus shows every week. And for this week, I'm going to quiz you on surf travel.
Okay.
This
I'm
is
ready for your.
test your global surf knowledge. Whether you're sipping Mai Tais on Tavarua or Cuba Libres in Tamarindo, you know where to park, or you know where to park to surf Salsa Puedes and the best car rental deals in Puerto Rico. But hey, what about getting off the beaten track for a change and find out what you really know about global surf travel? So I've got 20 questions here and I'm going to quiz Scott.
When was this issue? Is this a new issue or? Oh,
No,
this is an old issue.
this is 2000. This is from your era, October 2002 Surfer Magazine travel
Is that
quiz.
Lisa Anderson on the cover?
That's actually Gavin Beshan.
Oh,
You're
cool. I
right.
love Gavin
Saints.
Besson and I love Lisa Anderson. They're both great surfers.
Dude, you're right though. That is shockingly reminiscent of Lisa Anderson's 1993 cover.
That's what I thought. I was like,
I mean, it's a frontside air. They have the exact same hairdo.
yeah. Cool,
amazing.
cool, cool air grab. And hey, that's a little teaser for later in the show.
Cool. Well, look forward to that over on Patreon. And by the way, test your own knowledge along with Scott and I.
Yeah.
I just need to get you back for all the who said that's that I've gotten wrong.
Well, I mean, 20-year-old travel information is probably going to be outdated, but I'll do my best.
Some of it is very easy, and then some of it is not as easy.
Well, speaking of stumping the hosts, let's start with who said that, David. And I'm going to give you a quote from a surfer, and you're going to tell me, I'm going to give you four choices. You're going to select which surfer you think it might be. And I quote, I'm very disillusioned with professionalism in surfing. People haven't accepted surfing as a mainstream sport, and consequently, it's very difficult to make a living. I've come to a crossroads in my life where I have to make a choice between surfing and the future. And I don't think the future lies in surfing. End quote. Who said that, David? Was it one, Joey Baran, two, Dane Kealoha, three, Sean Thompson, or four, Simon Anderson?
Initial instincts would be A or C, and I'm going to go with C.
You're correct, David. Sean Thompson is the one who said that. And that was from a 1978 interview in Trax magazine with Aussie journalist Phil Jarrett. So in 78, that's interesting because Sean had won the world title in 77, wasn't feeling like there was enough money going around for these guys, and was thinking about a future outside of surfing, but of course went on to continue to surf professionally and become one of the greatest professional surfers ever. And a guy who sort of embodies what professional surfing is all about. And as you may know, I just finished a podcast with Sean, and you'll be able to get that podcast interview with Sean Thompson on the Boardroom podcast on surfsplendorpodcast.com.
Should we publish it today? Or did you
Sure.
want to wait for anything? Was it
Yeah, we
timed?
could. I mean, when was the Prodan one done? I like to kind of push them out every couple of weeks, but
Prodan was last week, so you
why
want
don't
to
we
wait a week?
wait a little bit?
Well, guess what? I interviewed Sean Thompson as well.
No way. Shut up. I'm so
Let me-
sorry. I did not know that.
No, I know. Well, so for the record, Scott and I really don't discuss scheduling, and this is the first time we've ever overlapped scheduling. I interviewed him Tuesday. When did you interview him? Yesterday? So
Yesterday.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
That's so wrong.
No, it's good. I think ours will be entirely different, I bet.
I don't know. Sean's pretty good at like making sure his agenda gets hit, you know. So you're
Well,
gonna
I mean, we hit his agenda. I mean, he's got a tour coming up for Busting Down the Door, so we wanted to discuss that. But
yeah.
we went way off of whatever his agenda was. Like he told me a lot about his father.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know a lot about that?
Yeah, I know. I do. I mean, I know kind of the bullet points. You know that his father was competitive swimmer and was attacked by a shark and lost his bicep, and yeah. So that's kind of the main stuff.
So the kind of theme of what we discussed, I had not heard him really discuss elsewhere. So I think it's
Good.
kind of fresh. And a lot of it was about, Sean radiates positivity. Like
Yeah.
I never heard him say a bad word about anybody. I've never heard him be cynical about the state of surfing or professional surfing or any of it, like he's always just positive and resilient, by the way, because he's had obviously tremendous hardships in his life. He lost his son. When I think his son was 15, um, and yet Sean exudes resilience. And so the theme was about his parents' upbringing and how that is encoded in Sean's DNA. His mother was raised on Malta, that was bombed, I think, 3,000 times during her upbringing. So
Wow.
that's how she ended up being a refugee in South Africa because of that. So, and she was positive. So it was kind of like him drawing these examples of what his parents had persevered in their young lives and growing and getting out of that and becoming, happy people despite those things and how that is part of Sean's DNA. So it was a lot about that. It wasn't even about surfing so much, you know. So I feel like we will generate two very different styles of conversation.
I think so, because mine was a lot about surfboards. Like I was drilling down into the
Yeah.
Borzity Road during that mid 70s, those years on the North Shore when the direction of professional surfing was changing, and those guys were sort of at the tip of the spear. So yeah, you're right. It will be, but how much fun is it? He's such a great interview. He's always been a great interview. Frankly, all of those guys from that busting down the door era are really great interviews. PT Ian Cairns is a fantastic interview. Sean Thompson, fantastic. Rabbit Bartholomew, fantastic. Those guys are great interviews. MR, great interview.
Well, also, how great is he just as a person, like a human being?
He's a wonderful.
I mean, it's really inspirational to kind of chat with him. I actually had dinner with him 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was a event called We Are Ocean in Newport
Mhm,
Beach,
mhm.
which is great if you want to look into that charity. But he and I were sitting right next to each other at dinner, and so we spent the evening chatting. And I was like, man, this guy is just the greatest ambassador for surfing, basically, you know, and he
Yeah.
has been for a long time, and I've always known that, but it's great to be able to, I don't know, be around him personally.
No, for sure. For sure. I mean, I left my conversation, I'm sure you did too, just feeling positive, feeling like there was hope. You know, I actually wrote when was emailing with him, I'm like, here are my 12 codes. You know, I sent him my codes and stuff, and we had a back and forth on that offline, but it was cool.
Would you be willing to share those on the bonus show, or are they
Yeah.
personal?
No, I mean, I could share a few of them for sure.
I would
I think
love to
that's
hear
the
that.
power of those codes is to share them.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, the code thing, people look into the code or listen to our podcast with Sean to learn more about the code. Um, so back to the quote that you read for Who Said That.
Yeah.
I forgot to play our theme song, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
man.
next week. How funny is it that that's all still true today? His quote about not being able to make money in pro surfing and needing to find a different way of life.
I know because I was thinking about throwing two surfers that were contemporaries into your choices and then having like, Sean and Joey Baran. I think Joey Baran was one that you could maybe go, oh, maybe he did that. And then like throwing like, I don't
Kyle
know.
Valley.
Yeah, Kaio would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kyle
And
literally posted a statement on that 1 month ago.
right, Kaio and somebody else. That would have maybe thrown you for a loop.
So this came up in conversation. I'm actually publishing a chat with Patti Paniccia today,
Hmm.
who is probably my Duke of the Week, honestly, because her story is criminally undertold, you know? And um, she was one of six surfers who was on the very first world tour. So 1976, IPS, the year that Peter Townend won. Um, the women also went on tour that year, but there was not a champion deemed. Patti was on that tour.
Well, hold on for just a sec. And maybe you can correct me too, but
Yeah, yeah.
in 76, there wasn't a tour. What there was a conglomeration of events. Basically, Fred Hemmings and Randy Rarick called up like the Gunston and called the Aussie guys, and they all got together and they said, hey, we're putting together a tour. Can we retroactively pull your points from the events you've already had and create a world champion? And that's how they got a 70. They had the 76 season on the North Shore, and events earlier in the year, they just pulled a point system together for that.
That's not the way it was explained to me.
Well, we need to look into this.
Yeah, definitely. So Patti, it was a tour that they did organize. There was three events in South Africa, one event in Brazil, and three events in Hawaii. So seven events total, and it was all mapped out in advance. The problem became with sanctioning the events. The IPS had a business model. You had to, if you were going to sponsor an event, you had to come up with a certain number of dollars that would be prize money. So it was equal prize money from place to place. And when they got to South Africa, some of the sponsors pulled out or didn't have the money. So those events were not sanctioned, basically. Um, so that's why it became a little, you know, convoluted. But they did map it all out in advance and go to those spots and pay a certain amount of $1,600 in advance to go on that tour, all that sort of stuff. So, anyways, we can sort out the details later after we research it more. But the point that I was going to make was Patti came back at a loss, like didn't earn, paid the $1,600, didn't earn enough money on that tour to make any money, actually lost money, was then scrimping and saving to go on the tour in 1977 and simply could not afford to go. So when everybody went on the sophomore tour, which then included Australia, she just couldn't afford it. But what she did end up doing was using some of that money that she had saved and go to law school the next year. She got accepted to Pepperdine University and became a lawyer, and went there, eventually became a lawyer. And it was that exact same thing that we're talking about, that it still exists today, which is couldn't afford to be a professional surfer. There was not enough money being generated in that space. You would have to take a loss if you wanted to be a professional surfer, or just have, your parents funding your lifestyle or something like that. But, her life turned out great. Like I kind of look at that and go, being a pro surfer seems glamorous when you're 20, but by the time you're 60 and you look back, maybe that wasn't the best way to spend your 20s and your 30s. There are other ways to make a living that might provide a more diverse and rich life.
Well, let me pull up some insight from that
Yeah.
I got from the Encyclopedia of Surfing. 25-year-old journeyman pro surfer Randy Rarick, along with Australian pros Peter Townend and Ian Cairns, convinced Fred Hemmings to switch to a points per placing system. And the International Professional Surfers, the IPS, was signed into existence on Randy Rarick's kitchen counter in October of '76, with Hemmings named as the executive director. 9 previously unrelated contests from earlier in the year were retroactively tabulated into the mid-season IPS ratings sheet, with 5 events still to come. And in the January of the following year, Peter Townend was announced as the '76 IPS world champion. A handful of professional women's events were also held in 1976, but the IPS didn't officially add a women's division until the following year. Hawaii's Margot Oberg won the first title. Patti Paniccia, another tour competitor, was named the IPS women's division director.
So it sounds like they
77.
added,
Yeah, go ahead.
so it sounds like you said they added 2 events basically to add to the points, because the tour existed, consisted of 7, and you're
Right.
saying in October they got together and they decided to add 2 more, which would make it 9
Yeah,
retroactively.
I believe they probably added the 2 from Australia that
Okay.
happened in the spring, right? Like Bells is in April. So there was probably 2 events in the spring. And I feel like they added the Gunston 500 too from South Africa, but I don't know.
Well, they did have 3 on the schedule before they set out in South Africa, and I don't know if one of them was the Gunston or not. So they got back from that tour, and then it sounds like added an additional 2 retroactively. But the other detail here is, despite those women going on tour in '76, a winner was not deemed, but Patti was the director of the tour and had been keeping tabs on everything, records of everything. And Jericho Poplar had accumulated the most points for the entire season, but they decided not to deem a winner. So Margot goes down in history as the first female champ based on the 1977 numbers. But that first year, there was a tour that existed. Like I said,
Why did she not create a winner if they had all that information in front of them?
So great question. Patti discusses this in our chat. Randy Rarick and Fred Hemming decided not to pick a winner, just the 2 of them. Even though Patti was the director and she had been involved in all the conversations leading up to that, they just opted not to and didn't consult her. And she still has kind of a beef about it. And is actually, but she maintains a good relationship with both those guys. She just got a
Yeah.
board from Randy. She still talks to Fred all the time. And she's brought this
Yeah.
up over the years of like, why wasn't I included in that decision? Like, here's all the documentation. And their answer back in the day was those were unsanctioned events. Remember, we couldn't get the money, but they still had judges. They still ran the events. They ran under the same judging criteria and rules as all the sanctioned events. They just
Mhm.
didn't have the money to officially, you know,
Mm.
have the prize money and all that sort of stuff.
Well, look, they were, it was a haphazard affair on many levels. They were just trying their best to scramble together and sort of band-aid this thing together to get it going, get it up and running, And of course, in the middle of all that was the situation that was occurring on the North Shore in '76 with Rabbit and Ian and the other Australians, basically kind of overplaying their hand regarding egos and so forth and so on, which is all clearly explained in the movie Busting Down the Door, which, by the way, I watched again prior to my Sean Thompson interview, and what an incredibly great. I love that film. It's such a good film and really a great documentary. And I feel like this sounds like, old man get off of my lawn, but here we go. I think every surfer should watch two films. Actually, let's make it three. Let's make it four. Endless Summer, right? Free Ride, Busting Down the Door, and the cartoon with Surfer Joe, Chicken Joe in it. What's that called? Surfers the movie?
Surfs
No,
up, surfs up.
Surfs Up. Yeah, those four.
Um, well, Busting Down the Door is going on tour, so that
Yeah,
is go see it in the theater. And by the
yeah.
way, the PT Rabbit, uh, Sean
Ian.
Thompson, Ian Cairns are all going to be there, doing Q&A with the screening. So the tour starts June 9th through the 19th. It's on 10 days, one tour. It's on the East Coast and the West Coast. Um, Asbury Park, Babylon, New Jersey, Santa Monica, Newport Beach, Seal Beach, Laguna Beach, Redondo Beach, and Encinitas. Maybe a couple other San Clemente looks like in San Diego. So get tickets. It's bustingdownthedoorfilm.com and go see it. And it's narrated by Edward Norton. I forgot about that. I haven't seen the movie in a while, but
It's great, great
yeah,
film.
really great film. So yeah, so anyways, still can't make a living off pro surfing unless you're in the top 5%, basically.
Yeah, it's getting. I mean, it just. You mean competitive professional surfing is what you mean, because guys are making livings doing it other ways, as you
But
know. Because
even still, you have to be in the top 5% to do that.
yeah, that's probably true. But there's other avenues, I guess. You know.
Other avenues than competitive surfing, but either way, if you're not the top performer, you got to have a day job.
Yeah, the bottom line is what you mentioned earlier. Like, it seems like a great idea at 20. And you said, oh, in your 60s, you'll be like that. I'm glad I didn't do that. But it's more like when you're 25, you're like, okay, time to change tracks.
Totally. Yeah. And to kind of follow up on the Patti, not to spoil the entire podcast I did with her. And by the way, everything that we're talking about with the Pro Tour, go listen to it from their mouths,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like I try to regurgitate it as accurately as I can, but my whole point with Surf Splendor is kind of to just let the people who lived the history tell the story themselves. And it is a one-sided story. I'm sure Fred Hemmings has a totally different side. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he should tell his too, and then you as the listener can just hear both sides of the story. That's my point.
Yeah.
I did text Fred, by the way, and haven't heard back because I do want to get his side of the story too. Um,
That will be a good interview. I think Fred is doing pretty good health wise,
yeah,
but you need to get him soon.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he'll go. He'll talk in a
totally.
good way. He's a very great communicator.
Yeah. So,
A very great
anyways,
communicator. He's a great communicator.
yeah.
Anyway,
Anyways,
dude, Margaret River Pro. Oh
holy
my.
cow. Holy
All
cow.
right.
Hey, the WSL hitting home runs, dude.
They kind of are.
I mean, it's incredible. I'm a big fan right now.
Because the why?
Crosby,
The
Ryan
waves of the star.
Crosby. Well, the
Waves of the
Waves of the
stars.
Stars, but I also would like to point a little bit of credit towards Ryan Crosby because I really feel like they are focusing it. The focus has been redirected a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, the waves absolutely have shown up, which is I think also highly important, but
Yeah.
they're crushing it. The fact that they ran at the box, I would say, is an administrative decision and
Right.
or an operational decision. And so that can be attributed to the WSL's actual like decision making. But yeah, the waves are pumping.
Well, you're right. I mean, what it tells us is that Ryan Crosby's getting out of the way and letting the people that know what's going on, like he's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This would have been a situation, a past administration would have been front and center and would have been, on camera going, well, we're thinking about doing this. And we've talked to, you know, Ryan Crosby's greatest asset is that he's intelligent enough to let the experts do the expert stuff and he does his stuff. And you hardly even know he's there.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to be. So, this is the first time they've run at the box in 5 years, just to put a bow on what we're talking about. But massive upsets in the rankings. Massive Margaret River. I mean, full steam Margaret River main break, and then the following day running at the box, which was full steam the box. I mean, this is kind of as big as I feel like, maybe not as big as it holds, but as big as it can be, like really, really good and still surfable, you know?
Yeah, pretty exciting. And again, the waves are the stars. Stab magazine wrote a pretty well. They always put out a really good piece, and they've done so again. And the big takeaway that I got from the Stab magazine, which I think is true, is that the box separates, in my opinion, and in Stab's opinion, really great surfers from just good professional surfers. You know what I mean? And they went so far as to say, hey, look, there's guys that are experts on slabs because they grew up and they've put in their time on slabs. And then there's guys that are like beach break pros that just, yeah, they can surf good and they rip and they do airs. But when it's really comes to testing your metal, they're not quite so good. And I would suggest they should go even further because it's my opinion that this is what separates really great surfers from just your average. It's not that I don't know if you're getting what I'm trying to convey, but waves of consequence, which is what the box is, separates the wheat from the chaff. And it's true, and it showed up here. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you spend a bunch of time at a slab. It just means that you're a freaking good surfer. There's guys that didn't grow up at slabs that can charge the box and charge it with confidence and do really well there. And Barramami is a great example.
So, totally agree. But I think this also highlights something that's a little bit more ephemeral, which is what you and I love about surfing is that there's an undefinable quality to it that makes it distinct from most other sports or maybe all other sports. And that's artistry. And so once in a while, we have a surfer kind of rise above. Tom Curran comes to mind, Kelly Slater comes to mind, Andy Irons comes to mind, Clay Marzo, where they just have, like Barron, did not grow up surfing slabs. He grew up surfing barrels in Hawaii, but not necessarily slabs. But his in tuneness with the ocean or attunement with the ocean was something to behold that day. You know, we saw, Kanoa Igarashi, for example, an incredible surfer, a top five surfer for a lot of the seasons, a good surfer in barrels. He's made the Pipe Masters finals twice. He could not sort it out. He could not make a wave out there. He was trying his best. He has Jake Patterson, a local surfer, as his coach, coaching him on what to do, and he could not figure it out. Couldn't make a wave. Barron paddles out in the next heat, and it was just as if Barron was born on the reef there, you know, and just absolute artistry. And so that's the moments that we love to see in surfing, where it technically proficient, yes, but also just kind of this in tuned with the ocean that came together in that moment.
Yeah, I think my point is that the surfers that advanced at the box, there shouldn't be a caveat or an asterisk that's put on them that's like, oh, but that's because they're slab guys.
No,
No, they're just the greatest surfers in the world. And that's sort of where I'm coming from.
totally agree. Like John Florence, we've seen him out there, uh, totally in sync.
Nathan Florence would have killed it.
Totally. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Is Pipeline the world's greatest slab? Is Pipeline a slab?
No, Pipeline does not count as a slab.
It's it's slabular on certain swells when it hits,
It gets slabular for sure. And
especially
there,
the left. I feel like.
yeah, there's days or there's waves on a given day that gets slabular, but it doesn't fit the
Why?
definition.
Because it's long. It's longer than a slab. Like what? It's a reef that sucks up violently and heaves. And there's certain waves that you definitely don't want to touch, like the ones that roll right underneath the first reef. I it's a good question. I'm not here. I'm not an expert. I think the Jamie O'Briens and the John Johns and the Nathans and all of those guys, the Barons, they would be better, you know, apt to answer that question. But
Let me try my
one
best.
that you could have a beer over
Let
is
me
Pipeline, the world's greatest slab.
let me try my best to distinguish. I think that it comes as close to a slab as you can without being exactly a slab. So I think one of the defining characteristics is bathymetry, where it goes from deep water to a very, very shallow shelf. So pipe has an element of that, a degree of that, but it's not as distinct as the box or ship sterns. Um, and so what ends up happening with that bathymetry is that a wave often has steps in it. It'll almost go below sea level when it actually folds over on itself. And so Chopu is actually kind of a better example, I think,
I
than
just wrote
pipe.
that down. I just wrote down Chopo. I was going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
So pipe is very close to being slabular. We need to you need to
Slabular.
trademark that.
That's part of our drinking game.
But Chopu is even closer, probably, but it's
Yeah.
still not, it doesn't quite fit the same definition as those other spots that I named. But
Okay. So the only definition you gave is the bathymetry, that there's a
the
little bit of a bubble or a burp. It comes from deep water immediately and hits a shelf.
yeah, and
And you're
then
saying
because
pipe has just a slight bit of that, but not enough for you to consider it a slab because there aren't steps, necessarily steps in the wave.
so if you look at the bathymetry, um, it goes, let's say the box, and I don't know, I've not seen the bottom at the box, but let's say it goes from deep water, let's say 100-foot drop off plus
Mm-hmm.
to 2-foot shallow reef, and that reef is at a 90-degree angles. The ocean is
Yeah.
running right into a 90-degree angle that's
Mm-hmm.
2 feet deep. And pipe, maybe it's a little less of an angle. It's not a 90-degree angle. Maybe it's a 75-degree angle that it runs into, And
Well,
Chopu maybe is an 85-degree angle or something like that. So we would have to define
I
the
feel like
exact,
Chopu
yeah.
is a slab. But what you're suggesting to me makes me think because there's third reef pipe, there's outer reefs out there that are slowing down, that are
Yes.
breaking the wave initially, that are slowing it down. It doesn't come from 200 feet to 3 feet, you know?
But there are waves and angles of swell that do skip that third reef, and then the entirety of the energy hits that first reef on the super shallow spot, and it does fold over on itself and create a
Yeah.
slabbing wave, but they're not all that.
Can there be a slab that is a sandbar?
Yeah, I think there could be.
Yeah, I think there are, right?
Yeah. I can't think of one off the top of my
Well,
head.
the bar right there at Pipe, when the sand moves over, that little um, what do they call that little wave there? Little sandbar wave. Anyway, Aints? No. Anyway, the little sandbar wave that Pipe at Aokai when there's the sands weird. Anyway, Chopu I think is a slab. Does a slab can have sand. It can be a sand bottom. Pipeline is not a slab. Fair enough. Move on.
Um, so let me ask you this in
Yeah.
regards to running it full, running at main break and running at the box during the same event and actually during the same round as we saw in the round of
Mm-hmm.
32, I think, for the men, or the round of 16 for the men.
16, yeah.
Um, how do you feel about switching venues mid-event or mid-round? And do you have a preference for one or the other?
Well, as a viewer, I was disappointed. Like
In which?
that they moved from the box to the main break for I think the last two heats.
Yeah.
That was a bummer. I
Yeah.
was as a viewer, I think we were all engaged in the box. I'll raise my hand and tell you that I didn't watch all the heats live because of the time change. So I woke up and watched the condensed heats, and it was on the big screen. It was pretty fascinating, and I did it all in like 25 minutes.
Mm.
And so and in so doing, when they moved it, when I clicked on the one heat, the Geordie heat, and they were at main break, I was like, oh, this just isn't quite as exciting. However, the waves were pumping and the surfing was next level. and the waves were bigger, obviously at main break, but a little disappointed. I was getting spoiled by the box.
I mean, I totally agree. The box was the most engaged I've been in pro surfing in a long time, professional competitive surfing.
Hmm.
And there was an anticipation that it might run on the box on that day. The previous day they ran at main break and the waves are absolutely pumping, and we will discuss that as well. But the anticipation that they might run at the box. When the event started, I turned it on. I was gripped. I was like, and I actually stayed up an hour past my bedtime.
Nine
Because
o'clock.
yeah, exactly. Because I couldn't turn it off. I was like, I'll
Yeah,
just put it on my phone while I'm laying in bed and just take a look. I just want to see the first exchange of this next heat. And then I
yeah,
watched all that heat, and then I'm going to watch the first exchange of this next heat. And then I watched all of that heat. It was that engaging. And that
yeah.
doesn't happen very often in professional surfing. It's a little bit slower out of the box, but it's still way better than having main break going for the full 30 minutes, even if there's tons of waves at main break. Um, I think it's a phenomenal idea to challenge these surfers in waves that they've never surfed before for all the reasons that you already stated. There was one, uh, person, or not one, but there's probably more, but there was one very vocal person about running there who was anti, and that was Filipe Toledo's dad. Filipe Toledo, he had already been knocked out of the event. And we've had this ongoing conversation about him maybe not being comfortable or brave enough even to surf in waves of consequence. He actually had a heat out at the box 5 years ago where he sat on the shoulder and never caught a ride. So here's what Filipe Toledo's dad said on the Instagram post that the WSL posted on their own feed about running at the box. Ricardinho Toledo said, I particularly think this wave is horrible to put on such an important event at this stage where many surfers have never actually surfed and they have their places on tour at stake. It's not a question that, quote, athletes at this level have to be prepared for anything, end quote, but in a good sense and let a more, quote, rippable surf show who should stay on tour since they insist on this cutting shit. This cutting shit meaning
Yeah,
the cut itself.
yeah.
People are going to lose their career. So he's saying it was a little lost in translation, I think. But what he was saying is this is too consequential and too outside of the norm of what they normally surf. They should be surfing more, quote, he used the quote, rippable surf show. So I thought that was worth pointing out as well.
That is worth pointing out. And everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm of a different opinion than Felipe's father. I feel like the world's best should be put and challenged. And certainly the box offers that opportunity.
I think his son is undeniably the greatest small wave surfer the world has ever seen. And so he's probably speaking from that world that they live in or where he wants to see his son thrive and all that sort of thing. But I think it's completely wrong-headed for the world tour to operate under that ideal.
I do not agree with you that Felipe Toledo is the greatest small wave surfer the world's ever seen. I will say that he's perhaps the greatest competitive small wave surfer the world's ever seen. But I always kind of go back to how would I want my son to surf in small waves? And it wouldn't be the way Felipe Toledo surfs. And it has nothing to do with his technique. It has more to do with his style. When style's everything, you got to start there. It's the friggin' foundation of it all. And I'm just not a super big fan of Philippe's style. I almost kind of think he doesn't have a style. He's so formulaic and not formulaic, but he's just very, you can tell that style's not important to him. What's important to him is doing maneuvers. And to me, anybody that surfs in that fashion, you can tell right away, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just not a fan of it.
Fair enough. Um, I'm glad they ran at the box. Like I said, they need to think about their business and also um, I think pushing surfers to their limits. And both those things happened that day where I was the most engaged fan that I've been in a long time in that event. So that's good for their business. And surfers got pushed to their absolute limits and some absolutely thrived. The one wave worth this, well, one of the waves worth discussing Griffin Colapinto. Griffin Colapinto, also a surfer who was not raised on a slab, but the 9 point ride that he got, I think it was the opening heat of the day,
Hmm.
was a magic carpet ride. Like him levitating through that barrel, and they got so much great footage and still shots of it where he is completely levitating in the barrel. Then it whites out with spit and kind of a little collapse, and you could see he's at the top of the wave, and when he comes out he got displaced way down to the bottom of the wave, but he just stayed perfectly centered on his board with no visuals. Like, he didn't have the benefit of eyesight because it was all whited out, and he still rode out of that thing perfectly with beautiful trajectory. It was incredible.
It was. And, as you mentioned, a great example of a guy who does not surf on a slab wave, absolutely um, showing that he's one of the world's best.
Totally. It was a phenomenal day of surfing. Now, interestingly, the women's heats were called off. Um, they only ran half a day of competition, and as you stated, the final two heats were moved to main break. But the women were called off, and apparently Caitlin Simmers was very vocal about this. She wanted to surf the box. Betty Lou Sakura Johnson, Molly Picklum, they all wanted to surf the box. And so I found it to be a very odd decision from Jessie Miley Dyer to not run the women that day at either venue.
Yeah, this was sort of the big controversy regarding that day, and from what I read on Stab, the decision was made so that the women's heats in that round could all run in the same types of conditions. But my question is, well, why was it okay for the men to move and not the women to split it up? And I think, on paper it sounds fair, but also we're dealing with Mother Nature, and we've got incredible, insane, probably the biggest Margaret River in a long time, and a chance for these women to go out there and surf, um, and or surf the box. And I think we would have all benefited from testing the women's abilities.
So I totally agree. The WSL's statement specifically was, quote, the decision was made so that the women's heats could all run in the same conditions. With both Lakey and Sally on opposing sides of the draw and their careers on the line, there was only enough time to run one half of the draw today. This could have set up an unfair playing field with vastly different conditions later in the week.
Well,
Seems
that happens all the time.
all the time. They do the opposite of what they just said all the time. And they did it that day, in fact, as you pointed out, by
Yeah.
running most of the men's heats at the box and then the final two over at main break. So it's never a level playing field in surfing. The conditions change from the beginning of the day till the end of the day. There's
Yep.
no way to give equal conditions all day. But what you did have was phenomenal surf right in front of you and women champing at the bit to go out and surf them, and you didn't allow them to surf. One of the
Yeah.
first rules of checking the surf is don't drive away from good surf.
Yep.
And that's what they did. And
Yep.
so I think it was a disservice to the women, especially in an era where they are the ones banging the drum of equal pay, equal opportunity, equal access, all that sort of stuff. And then
Yeah.
to not give the girls the option to surf out there was a misstep.
Yeah. I think, that statement that Katie made, pipe is for women, or whatever, pipe is for girls, or pipe is for women, or whatever it was.
Pipeline is
That's,
for the effing girls, end quote.
yeah. So here we go. Like, we've got massive swell and the world's best wanting to go get it. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I think it was a mistake.
And I also think it's okay if those three girls that I named, women that I named, go out there and dominate and the rest of the tour flails.
Yes.
Guess what? Next year, there's going to be five instead of three that step up to the occasion. And the following year, there's going to be 10 instead of five. So you have to
Yeah.
allow the
Totally agree.
opportunity for the advancement of the sport, especially if you are the lead organization in the sport.
Well, we've got a setup where the two Colapinto brothers could find each other surfing in the finals. There's some heats still to be run. There's 4 heats to be run, but they're on opposite ends of the draw. But we got Griffin versus Leonardo, fascinating heat. Connor versus Barron. Jacob Wilcox, who's the wild card, versus Crosby Colapinto. and Jordy versus Ima Kalani DeVault. So really great heats coming up. I think the Griffin Leonardo heat is really a clash of titans.
Leo looked the best at both venues, in my opinion. Leo is having a banner season,
Yeah,
phenomenal performance at in El Salvador, consistent from venue to venue. But he looked like the guy to beat at main break when main break was big. I forget what his heat total was, might have been around the 17-point range,
yeah,
where a lot of people were having trouble sorting it out. He went out there and just looked incredibly comfortable. Then at the box, also one of the standouts of that day. So I'm looking at Leo for a potential, not only, event win, but finding himself in the top five. And
for
he's a
sure.
threat
He's a
as a
total threat.
champ.
For the first time all season, I'm going Leonardo Fioravani could be our world champion.
And I'm
I
a
have no
fan.
problem seeing, and I was even thinking the other day, I was like, if I could place a bet, because you're going to get good odds on Leo right now, he would be a great bet to be the world champion.
Totally. Total underdog. Nobody saw him coming prior to the season.
Nobody.
Yeah. So
And
huge
nobody's
fan.
really thinking about him now, I don't think. Maybe
And I
just now.
and I love to see it. Like
I
I'm
would too.
rooting for him.
I am too.
So
Jordy, Leo, I'm rooting for you guys.
yeah, Jordy too. Totally. Number one and number two, that'd be incredible. So the other detail here is just the shakeups. Like Imai Kalani DeVault took out Jack Robinson. Jack Robinson is the local. He is the favorite. Um, and Imai is one of those really gifted free surfers who hasn't been able to convert to competitive success. But once a year, he has a performance that kind of like just is noteworthy and incredible. And that's what he's having at this spot right now. So I would not be surprised to see him continue to charge through this event. Um, Italo Ferreira, who has been in the number one position for, I don't know, 3 or 4 events, has had a list of
Three
shockers,
17ths in a row.
all knocked out by wild cards, believe it or not. So Xavier Huxtable took him out in Bells, Julian Wilson took him out at Burley, and now Jacob Wilcox at Margaret River. So he is liable to lose his first place seating.
I love that.
I
And
know, me
it does
too.
bring up a point of contention that I don't bring up, but some are going to be, this is why wild cards are no good. Look what they're
This is why
doing to
wild
Elo.
cards are good.
I agree. Totally agree. This is insane. I
Yeah,
love this.
I love it too. And Jacob Wilcox, can't say enough good things about him. He rises to the occasion. He's an incredible threat.
I brought this up with Dave Prodan regarding next season. You could potentially have John Florence and Kelly Slater and maybe somebody else as wild cards in the pipe event. And the idea that the number one in the world is going to have to go up against John Florence or Kelly Slater is incredible. You couldn't write this for TV, but this is the script you want. And
Totally.
I think it's fascinating how they're going to deal with the wild cards at Pipe next year.
Well, I think, look, the thing that we always talk about is put the best surfers in the world in the best waves. We know who the best surfers in the world are at Pipe, and Kelly and John are, you know, 1 and 2, maybe potentially. And so the question mark becomes at other venues, is there a local wild card who's as big of a threat, maybe as, one of the CT surfers? And I don't know the answer to every venue on tour, but at certain venues, we do know. And so just give them the wild card in. We don't need a trials event. We don't need any sort of weird convoluted ranking system. We already know John Kelly at Pipe. So put them in.
Well, what's interesting, right, is that next year at Pipe will be it'll be deciding the world champion in
Hmm.
26. And so when you think about it, you could have a top seeded Baron Mamiya versus John Florence in an early round. I mean, that's exciting. Two of
Totally.
the 1 and 2 in the world at Pipe, probably John and Baron. Yeah, that's insane. What's also interesting is that because Pipe is at the end of the season in 26, what's going to happen this December and January at Pipe? You know what I mean? We usually kick off the season in February at Pipe. We're gonna
Yeah,
have to wait a whole year until Pipe. Of course,
that's true.
there will be the backdoor shootout, and the WSL still holds that January permit, and maybe they give it to somebody that will run a pipe event that will be local pipe, experts, like they
Yeah.
normally do with the Pipe Vulcan Pipe Pro in the past and the Pipeline Masters in the past.
Vans event.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know either. But if they don't run an event, it's not the end of the world for me.
more will be revealed.
Um,
But we're looking at a situation, David, where Jordy Smith, Baron Mamiya, Leonardo Fioravanti, and frankly, even Griffin Colapinto could all shake up and move into the top five. Although Baron and Jordy are already there, they could move up more.
so the other big stories, two noteworthy moments that I have in my notes from the big day at Main Break was Willow Hardy's, I don't know, 15, 18 footer. I don't know what size that wave was, but local Charger, local wild card Willow Hardy. I don't know how old she is even. 15? I gotta look it up.
I
Did you
don't
see
know.
that wave that she got that looked like it was small Waimea?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh my gosh. Um, I mean, real quick, Willow Hardy age.
Willow Hardy. How old is she? Young Australian.
She was
Probably.
born in 2006, so almost 20, 19 years old.
Wow.
Goofy footer, but she got this absolute bomb at Main Break. Um, like literally, like it looked like small Waimea, made it to the bottom and just got detonated at the bottom. So it was an incredible, like the biggest wave of that heat, maybe of that day. And everybody's just like, what? And she scrapes in, makes it to the bottom, took forever to get there, and then just gets detonated. So that was an incredible moment. The other one was Baron Mamiya getting stuffed into the bricks. Did you see this scary moment?
No.
So that on the right, it hits that shallow reef after the end section, and it just gets really they can walk on it and it's like ankle deep water.
Yeah.
Well, apparently on the underside of that, there's a bit of a cave formation. And so he ate it right in front of that, got stuffed into the cave, and his board was over the top, kind of tombstoning. So
Oh.
so you could see his board and you're like, where's Baron? And he wasn't coming up. And it was because when he was stuffed under there, obviously the force of the wave in the ocean is pushing him further back into that spot. And so he had to wait for the wave to kind of dissipate a little bit and he was able to scramble and get out of that.
Wow.
But it was really, really a scary moment. And his board got completely obliterated, like damaged the back half of the board and blew the fins out and all that sort of stuff. But super scary situation to see. Scary to see Barron in it, but also Barron made that heat and then was at the box the next day and did what we said earlier that he did at the box. So wasn't as rattled as I would have been under that same conditions.
You know what? Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and discuss more on Spit, the Spit podcast.
All right, Scott, welcome back.
Yeah.
I had one other thought that I wanted to share with you about the box, and it was just, could you surf it?
The box? Hell no. Hell no. I'm way too old to surf the box. It takes me like, you know, a solid 5 seconds to get to my feet these days.
Could you have ever surfed it on the day that we just witnessed?
Uh, I mean, maybe, back in my 20s, maybe. I, I'm not a professional surfer. I think I would need to spend a ton of time surfing there to get it figured out. I know guys from around here that could paddle out and surf it right away. Colin Smith comes to mind. San Diego, North County, Cardiff guy that I grew up with. He's a guy, and there are other guys around here that could do it. I'm certainly not one of them. Even in my prime, I would need months.
My buddy Sean texted me while it was going on, and he's like, it feels like, I don't know, would you paddle out there? Do you think you could figure it out? I'm like, hell no. Did you watch Kanoa's heat? Like, if Kanoa can have figured it out, and he's like, I don't know, if you had a coach and there was nobody else in the lineup to like get in the way, I think maybe we could figure it out. And I'm like, no, you are completely overestimating our own abilities. There is no way we'd figure it
No,
out.
no. Even in our prime, we would need months
No.
to
Yeah,
figure it out.
exactly. Anyways, let's move on.
Yeah. Um, I see here Kelly Slater is getting a wild card into the next event, which is at Lowers, by the way, in June, which is why Rabbit and those guys are coming over from Australia as part of the busting down the door deal. So 11-time world champ Kelly Slater, a wild card at the 2025 Lexus Trestles Pro presented by Outer Known. Slater is going to return stop number 8, the first events after the cut. So he gets to deal with less people. Are you excited for Kelly Slater at Lowers?
I think it's a bad move. I like Kelly Slater. I always want to see Kelly Slater surf. I would like to see him surf lowers, but he's not a threat to win this event.
Should all wildcards be threats to win the event?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the point? I mean, this feels like a, I don't know, publicity stunt more than anything, to be perfectly honest. I know Kelly in his prime was obviously a huge threat for 20 years at lowers, but the level of surfing at venues like that has really uh, just gone past what Kelly's currently doing. When I look back and think of like that clip from Snapper this past year, that was unbelievable. And that was setting the, or was it Kira? Actually, it was Kira. That Kira clip was like high performance, incredible. Kelly set the standard on that day, but that's not the same as lowers. Lowers is specifically like high performance, fast twitch, muscle fiber kind of stuff. And Kelly's just not at that level anymore with the guys who are a threat to win it, like John John or Filipe Toledo.
If Kelly Slater had a kid when he was 15, and if that kid had a kid when he was 15, Kelly could be surfing against his grandkid in this event. Kelly Slater's 53 years old. I mean, we're getting to a place. Look, I think that Kelly could make a long run through this event and take out some contenders along the way. But at some point, um, you're going to run into Filipe Toledo, which frankly could be an early round heat. But there's just two, and I bring up Filipe because he's sort of the guy to beat at lowers. But there are a handful of guys that all have incredible air game. Um, and I don't know. Let me ask you this. Do you think if Ethan Ewing and Kelly Slater were in a heat, there was no airs, it was just pure turns, that Kelly even has a chance?
No,
I don't
I'm
either.
gonna, I'm gonna read the top 10, and I don't think Kelly has a chance against any of them, to be perfectly honest,
Without
unless
airs, like let's take the air game
I
out
don't,
of the equation.
you can't take air game out of the equation.
I
It
think you
is the
can be
equation at
just for
lowers.
this exercise though, just to gives this like is like the handicap. We're handicapping it. You're not allowed to do airs. Can Kelly beat this person?
I'll play your reindeer game, but Italo, who do you got? Italo or Kelly, who do you got?
Idolo's is going to be a little sparky, especially on his backside. I think it's Idolo.
Jordy Smith, number 2.
I think Kelly could beat Jordy,
No way,
but
dude.
it's more of a toss up. It's
No
two
way.
pretty big power hacks. Okay.
Yago Dora,
No.
Kanoa,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Ethan,
No.
Felipe,
No.
Jack Robinson,
No.
Leonardo Fioravanti,
Yes.
Miguel Pupo.
Maybe.
I got Kelly beating Miguel in this and maybe Jack Robinson, but everybody else I think has Kelly's number at lowers.
Well, you
Even
know what?
and
That's why we run heats, bros. That's why we run heats.
I mean, and look, if it was 8 feet, Kelly's got a better chance than if it's less than 8 feet. But I think all those guys have a little bit more. And your game was only if you're eliminating errors. In the event, they're not eliminating errors. So
Right.
then you really open it up. And
Yeah.
it'll be fun to watch Kelly surf, but I just don't think he's a threat to win the event, which should be key. Um, that
Hold on
event
for just a sec. My
that
dog's freaking out. My wife left me without.
that event starts June 9th, by the way, and runs through the 17th if they need the full window.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's all right. Also, just for listeners who are interested, this weekend Stab High is going to run. It's May 23rd and 24th. So it runs in Japan, Stab High Japan. So if you're in Japan, it'll be Saturday, Sunday. If you're in the Americas, it'll be Friday and Saturday. This year, there's 4 different divisions: the men's division, the Ladybirds, which is 15 and under, the Bottle Rockets, which is 15 and under, and then an all new women's division. So adult women, not Bottle Rocket or not Ladybirds. Um, and it's an air show. Best air counts. They've got the perfect swell technology in the wave pool with a new air section that looks incredible. The winner who performs the most impactful air of the event, regardless of division, will also get an additional prize. So I'm pretty excited for this. I think they do an incredible job with their production. And then also the list of surfers that they got this year is, I don't know, double the amount of surfers that they've had in the past. And it's really a who's who and super diverse. Everybody from Chippa Wilson, kind of on the older end of the spectrum, to the most innovative young surfers from around the world. They got everybody to fly out to Japan for this. So,
I'm super excited for this actually, and this is where my drinking game comes in for
oh,
everybody.
forgot about that.
But yeah, so this section's called the McFly air section. It's been fabricated by the Perfect Swell people at American Wave Machines. And so here's look, I'm going to watch this. I think you mentioned the times, and I think it's going to be on on our time zone. Like it's watchable live, I believe. Do you know?
Let's see. I think it's 5 p.m. in Los Angeles. It'll start.
Yeah, that's like perfect.
Yeah.
So here's the drinking game. When anybody eh, says the phrase, that was sick,
Ooh.
you have to shotgun a beer.
Ooh.
Now, when the phrase, that was so sick, you have to shotgun two beers. And if Zeke flips off anyone, you have to take a shot of tequila. That's the drinking game right there. Three things. Be on the lookout. That was sick. That was so sick. Or if Zeke flips off anyone.
Wow.
Shit. Yeah.
Tell Lauren to be prepared for to be doing the single parenting tomorrow night.
Yeah. So
I'll be out of commission.
I'm
Uh,
psyched for Stab High Japan.
yeah, they do such a killer job. The other thing that they do a great job with is documenting the lead up to the event. Like I've been seeing on social media and stuff, just stuff going on, guys doing crazy airs in the pool while they're setting up the scaffolding and all that sort of stuff. So I love seeing the behind the scenes stuff leading up to the event. I will watch the event. I'll stream it all day, and excited to see what airs come out of this too.
Yeah, it's going to be it's actually something I'm looking forward to. It's on my calendar. It's going to be must watch TV
Well,
for me.
the other thing that you and I love is just having an alternative other than just the WSL's contest and contest format, just to have on for Friday and Saturday, like in addition to, there's also this sideshow going on. And so Stab spending the time and the effort to like put on live streamed events is no small feat. So huge appreciation for that.
Yeah,
Um,
looking forward to it.
I will be drinking instead of the alcohol that you mentioned. I'm going to drink the drinkag1.com/surf. By the way, the new shaker that you got with the metal cap is
Hello.
reflective of AG1 Next Gen. So they've reformulated it a bit with like
Yeah.
new probiotics, more vitamins, minerals. Go research it, everybody on your own at drinkag1.com/surf. But it basically tastes the same, looks the same. It's just a better product.
Heck yes. I'm a huge fan. It's part of my daily routine. The AG1, it's so simple. A scoop of the AG1, mix it with 8 ounces of water. Bang. Tastes good. Easy way to get much needed nutrients, especially as you and I, David, move through life.
Exactly. And get older. Um,
That's kind of what I meant.
yeah, I know. The other thing that I'll mention is
Oh, yeah.
I recently launched a podcast with the Surfrider Foundation,
Yeah.
and we just did an interview with famous kind of A-list actor Liev Schreiber. You
Hmm.
might know him from Ray Donovan. He was in the original Scream movie. He was in the X-Men movies. And he and his wife live out in Montauk, and so they are dealing with coastal erosion issues, water quality issues. There's tourism there. It's like it used to be a no man's land. It was a fishing village, surfing kind of community. But in the last decade, it's become really popular where they get like 30,000 tourists every month that come through. And so that creates, of course, uh, issues. And so we discussed that, and they are just great. And Liev surfs too, which is why it's relevant to you and I. So if you want to check that out, it was a really great chat. Go to find the Surfrider podcast wherever you get this podcast. And of course, Surfrider Foundation, surfrider.org, become a member.
Hey, the Boardroom Show Boardroom International Surfboard Show presented by US Blanks is coming up in October. David, I've got a list so far. The list of exhibitors is growing. We've got Dick Brewer surfboards, Channel Island surfboards, Rusty surfboards, Pizell surfboards, GNS surfboards, Hobie surfboards, Kelly Slater Designs, Rob Machado surfboards, Tomo surfboards, Dark Art surfboards, Stu Kenson surfboards, Andrini surfboards, Steve Boyson surfboards, Craig Hollingsworth surfboards, Patagonia FCD, Fletcher Chenard surfboards, Bomb Waves, Trees Wax, Apple Tree surfboards, Firewire surfboards, CJ Nelson surfboards, Hollingsworth surfboards, Local Motion surfboards, Hanson surfboards, Harley Ingleby surfboards, Wayne Rich surfboards, Jerry Lopez surfboards, Cooper Fish, FCS fins, NVS fins, Future fins, True Ames fins, Huskawig surfboards, DK surfboards, Harborside glassing, SurfTech, Maurice Cole surfboards, Weekend Vance, Sea Vance, Narval wetsuits, Faro board bags, and of course, Eric Arakawa is our icon of foam. Eric Arakawa surfboards, October 11th and 12th at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. The Boardroom International Surfboard Show booths are selling quickly.
What a list.
I know. I'm excited, and it's going to be fun. Anyway, I
One
wanted
of
to crowbar that in, let people know it's going to be a lot of surfboards at the Boardroom International Surfboard Show.
One of my favorite weekends of the year.
Absolutely. It's going to
Largely
be good stuff.
because we get to hang out with so many listeners and interface.
Come in.
My Duke of the Week, as I previously mentioned, I'm going to go Patti Paniccia. Google her name, man. I mean,
Yeah.
if you haven't heard of her, just Google and be impressed. And then listen to my show that'll be published this week. And then my must-see moment presented by Treeswax, treeswax.com, petroleum-free surf wax. Occy, Billabong just dropped a video yesterday, Occy at Cloudbreak in J Bay, and it is unbelievable how good he surfs.
Yeah. He's a, the word legend gets thrown about a bit, and he is deserving of the moniker Legend Occy.
If only for his surfing ability, absolutely cement him as a legend because it he was always, it was incredible in his youth, but now watching him at the age, I don't even know what age he is, late 50s probably.
Yeah.
I did not appreciate his surfing when I was growing up. When I was growing up and people like pointing at him as like their favorite surfer, I was like, you guys are tripping. I've never seen him blow the fins out the back once. And now I watch his surfing and I'm like, nobody on the planet surfs like him. And I'm not sure that anybody will ever surf like him in the future. It somehow, the moment he steps onto the board, the moment he gets to his feet, he's going full speed. And he never does a check. He never does a double check bottom turn. It's just full speed rail engagement in every maneuver and motion. It's a marvel to behold.
How about Occy Slater Legends Heat at Trestles?
I would love to see it, and I'd rather watch Occy actually as the wild card at Trestles.
Wow, there you go. That's a hot take right there.
Nobody surfs like him. It's unbelievable to watch. And watching him at Cloudbreak is like such a treat.
I feel like we've given Kelly Slater enough ammunition to go out there and show everybody what's really it's all about.
Look, I would love nothing more if he proved me wrong. And it's exactly what Occy did in this video is blew my mind out, just like whatever, I don't know. I kind of expect greatness from him, but he just outsurfed my expectations.
Cool. I love it.
Check it out.
All right, look, until next time, adios and aloha.